folks. Welcome. How was your weekend? How was your weekend?
Going good so far.
So far, oh my gosh, we have optimistic folks in the house.
Yeah, it was a little bit of chaos.
Little,
at the
do
beginning.
not diminish it, man. Like, say it with your chest. Like, this was a messed up weekend. I don't
Yeah.
know if people have seen. There's so many things coming together, Kripa. I cannot, like, so many crisscrosses of socioeconomic variables coming together for this, where I don't know if people have seen this Reddit thread where trigger warning, somebody, and this is going viral, where somebody has said, oh, I'm going to end my life now because going back to India is not. How many people have seen that thread that I'm talking about? Has anybody seen that Reddit screenshot, or like somebody saying this on X? But they're like, this is it. This is how we're gonna go out, because I cannot go back to India. My entire life is here. And then people took that as a bait to spew other sorts of hate. But
There was also yesterday, I think I read about seats on economy
going up. Yeah.
something ridiculous, like 7,000, because people were just making a mad dash, right? I mean, and I'm going to talk about this. I keep joking that if there was ever a flight going to like Guantanamo Bay or some such dark cell, like they'll keep me in the jump seat as with the pilot, right? Because I don't censor myself politically, but the chaos is very much a part of this administration, right? Like they want to sow chaos because they know they can.
Yeah.
And at a very visceral level, I feel like, and again, this is me as a first generation immigrant as well, but I think it's this very dysfunctional power and control wheel of, telling immigrants, like, I can take this away from you at a moment's notice. Don't you dare forget it.
Correct.
When you keep that in mind, everything makes sense.
Yeah. It's just that's what it feels like, or that's what it felt like being a pawn in the hat. Like, how they have those like tiers where they have the strings and they can make you dance in whichever way you want them to. It truly, immigrant to immigrant, it did feel like that. So I always talk about this, that I did not fight for a green card so that I could toot my horn that I'm a permanent resident of the United States. I did it to safeguard myself. I did it to save myself from these jolts that my nervous system was just so tired of taking year after year after year after year. It was not to make it sound that like woo-woo, but it was my highest form of self-love. That this is the most amount of respect that I can show myself, to be out of this charade and circus. So if you're here with that mindset, congratulations, you're in the right. And I was just telling Kripa that I could not have found a better person, not just a lawyer, a better person to talk about this, because she has done a webinar for me before. She's doing it again. She says it as it is. And today's talk is going to be that, yes, you're in the room, talk about how you need to talk about your work in EB1, but the elephant in the room is H1B. So I've requested Kripa to quickly acknowledge that and talk about what is reality and fiction. And from there, we're going to move directly into how do you talk about your work? How do you frame your work in EB1? And Kripa has been gracious enough to share excerpts from EB1 cases that she has filed to help you understand how framing works. And yes, this slide deck is going to be shared, so don't lose your levels on that. Kripa, are you ready?
Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. Bright and morning, bright and early, at least for some of us. All right. So I'm just going to run through, I think.
Kripa, do you want to make this full screen? So.
Oh, I thought it was full screen. Sorry.
Yeah, you have to hit that chalice thing at the bottom. Yeah.
What? No.
You see notes, comments, and then
icon,
there's a chalice.
left icon next to minus sign.
You see minus 46%, like bottom right-hand corner of your screen, I'm assuming. And there's a chalice, like little chalice thingy.
I'm not seeing a chalice anywhere.
Oh,
F5? F5?
Just press F5, yes.
Yeah, just do
F5.
F5, yeah.
F5. There you go.
Okay, can you tell I have zero tech sense? This is
But good
perfect.
for you. This room is filled with tech people.
This is just perfect. Okay. No. Okay. Should I just stop screening? Stop. Sorry, I can't even speak. Sorry. Should I stop sharing? Aditi, do you want to put up the one that I sent you this morning?
Sure, we can do that.
Just because, yeah, sorry, I've been on phone calls and emails since 3 p.m. Friday dealing with the H1B mess. So let's go to that for the moment while we are working on
I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And Kripa, I know that you have a couple of excerpts, but people I know want to talk with you. So can we do however much we can go till 12:45, and then we take questions? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Perfection. All right, people can see.
All right, so we can actually skip the about me. I'll leave that for you to read later, but that's the unimportant stuff. Let's go to the important stuff. So okay, H1B, Lord above, this thing was an absolute nightmare starting Friday. So what happened Friday afternoon was that we got a renewal of what used to happen under the Trump administration, under the first Trump administration, where we got a executive order that came through at 3 p.m. that was very, very badly framed. And so when the executive order was signed, it basically went into effect yesterday at midnight, right? And the way it was framed made it seem like this $100,000 was going to apply across the board. And then Lutnick was standing there, Secretary of Commerce, and just very off the cuff, he said, oh, this is also going to apply to renewals. Right. And so if you read the text of the executive order, it basically says the 100,000 is going to apply across all H1Bs. It's going to apply for renewals. If you have an H1 and you leave the US and you re-enter with a new visa stamp, likely going to apply against you. I can only assume, I don't know, I assume every tech CEO that had sat around that table and talked to Trump and told him how wonderful he was and how benevolent he was, and you know, he was the world's most good-looking, most thin, most whatever have you superlative adjective you want to throw in there. Every single one of them called, because this essentially means the end of their businesses. The medical industry was in absolute disarray yesterday, because if you understand what's happening on the medical side of things, right, the US is facing a shortage of about 100,000 doctors by 2030. And that gap right now in healthcare is essentially being filled by foreign medical graduates, most of whom are on H1Bs because we don't have enough J1s even for medical doctors, right? And so the hospital industry was going to be badly, badly affected. So then they start walking this back. Eventually ended up with, I think it was 3:30 p.m. yesterday afternoon, with a statement from Joseph Edlow, who was the director of USCIS, explaining that the $100,000 fee was actually prospective, meaning it only applies to applications that will be filed today onwards. And it would only be assessed against new applications. So not against renewals, not against transfers within the US, but new applications where you are entering the United States on a visa, right? So that's where we are right now. So for those of you that may have H1Bs in process because you made it through the lottery and you're just waiting to start work on the 1st of October, there is a backlog in processing at USCIS, but again, you're not going to be held to the 100,000. It's only for new applications that would be being filed, submitted as of tomorrow, let's say, okay? Concurrent with the executive order was also a separate order which requires Department of Labor to essentially redo the minimum wage tables. So when employers file the LCA, we work off of the Department of Labor statistics. And so combined with the executive order from Friday is an order to Department of Labor telling them to essentially increase the minimum salaries, right? And so that is going to come up sometime before the next lottery season. Lottery season starts January. For those of you that may be on F1s, OPTs, and needing to find employers, you need to start doing that right now. Okay, questions coming in for us fast and furious. All right, we'll get to them. Hang on a minute. For those of you that are on F1s, OPTs, CPTs, you need to look for jobs. You need to start doing that process right now. Most employers are going to make hiring decisions right in January. The lottery season cap, we expect, will start sometime in February. This year it was late February through the end of March, with the lottery taking place first week of April. So you really need to start doing your networking and try and have your job, in order before November, because once Thanksgiving starts, I don't think there's going to be a lot of recruiting happening. So for those of you that are heading into cap season and have cap subject or cap exempt, I don't think it matters. You will likely have to face this $100,000 lawsuit. That being said, one of the things, and this is probably veering off and giving you a little too much information, but I'd rather that you have everything than not. So immigration law is governed by the Administrative Procedures Act, or what we call the APA. The APA is essentially the rule book, if you will, for administrative agencies, and that has very, very clear rules about new rulemaking. Okay, so anytime you change a rule, you add a rule, you're supposed to go through what's called a notice and comment period, which means the agency puts out a statement saying, this is what we plan to change, this is when it's going to go into effect, this is who it's going to affect. And then the public, as well as companies and whoever is impacted, get to post comments. And that period has to go 90 days, right? President does not get to wake up on Friday morning and decide he's going to sign this, and voila, there you have it, there's a new law. So I fully expect that there will be legal challenges filed about violations of the APA. We expect that that will be sometime probably by the end of this week, certainly by the end of the month. Again, because we're told this is going to be for petitions moving forward as of Monday. There were some of us that were already speaking Friday late night about filing federal court challenges as early as tomorrow morning. I think that has been put on hold for now, but we are looking at plaintiffs. We are looking at ways to move forward to potentially file lawsuits claiming, well, not claiming, essentially showing that this did not follow the Administrative Procedures Act. And so this was illegal, and we'll wait for the federal courts to strike them down. Now what happens in federal court and how long that takes is going to be a different process. But bright line rule, I think, for those of you that are on OPTs and CPTs and need to file a new H1B, your employers are likely going to need to file that $100,000 fee. It's meant to be a one-time fee per application. I think what that means for some of you, unfortunately, particularly those of you that are students, likely going to have a much harder time finding employment, because now you have to start at a higher wage, right? The $100,000 fee will apply to H1B applications moving forward, which means employers are going to be much more selective about the quality of the employee, if you will, the amount of experience they have. If they can no longer do level 1 wages, which is what we had during Trump 1.0, then they're going to look for people with sufficient experience and expertise so they can start them at the level 2. Now, this thing about not allowing level 1 jobs, the people that have screamed the most about this are the FANG companies, because it makes sense. If people don't know the basics, how do you all of a sudden leapfrog to being a manager or an executive level employee, right? That's just not how the world works. That's not how any job works. And so again, much too early to start, throwing your hands up in despair. Leave that to the attorneys. Trust me. I mean, most of us went bald and gray yesterday. But honestly, seriously, don't throw your hands up in despair. I get how absolutely frustrating this is. I think what those of you can do, even if you are students, pay attention to what the rest of this session is going to be about, and try to see how quickly or how efficiently you can position yourself into an O1, an NIW, or an EB1. And outside of what, the various counselors and immigration, I learned my first term last month, actually, immigration influencer. I didn't know that was a thing. Apparently it is. But what they will tell you is that you have to have, 7 patents and be Einstein reborn in order to qualify for an EB1. It is getting harder. It's getting a lot harder to get immigration to agree to NIWs and EB1s, but it is still doable. right? So you should try to make every effort you can to figure out what can you do, even as a student. What can you do as a student to position yourself for an O1, an NIW, and EB1? If all else fails, there's the EB5. And I will say this as an EB5 attorney, right? The EB5 is beautiful. They don't ask you for your qualifications. They don't ask you for anything else. You have 800,000, here's a red carpet, come on right in, right? Don't have to worry about anything. But I also want to say, for those of you that might be thinking of, where does my life go from here? You have enough skills that another country will respect. You really don't need to put up with this nonsense. You really don't, right? And I think that's a very, very personal decision. It's an intensely personal decision. But, Canada will welcome you with open arms, as will Australia and as will the United Kingdom. But I think that's the other thing you do, right? Is in addition to controlling your own destiny to the extent that you can by positioning yourself for an O1 or an NIW or an EB1, also work with attorneys that can maybe guide you to opportunities for what it takes to do maybe the express entry into Canada or the global mobility, the global tech stream into the United Kingdom or any other country that would allow you to come in based on your skills, right? But if staying in the US is the objective and you've got family here and you've got kids here, which I know a lot of you do, then I think getting out of H1B and getting into some other alternate visa path that gives you more control over what happens to your career and your career growth in the US is what you need to start paying attention to now. All right. That being said, the rest of these slides I want to also say are interchangeable. I know that we're talking more about EB1, but the way that I frame this generally for national interest waiver and for O1s, I think, particularly under this administration, whether you are filing an O1 or a national interest waiver or an EB1, at some point, obviously national interest waiver, that is the specific significance, right? How is the work that you do important to the interests of the country? But I think you also want to make sure to address that in your O1 and in your EB1. Adjudication trends at immigration right now are becoming much more stringent, and they want to make sure that you are somebody that is worthy of being in the US. And so you want to pull that in to any petition that you're filing. So this here is where we are in terms of adjudication rates. You will see, EB1A denial rates have gone up slightly over the years. They seem to have gone up considerably under this administration. I mean, we're up at 27.3% just in Q2, and then corresponding increase on the EB2 NIW. The EB2 NIW denial rate is actually the highest it's ever been. And I'll talk about why I think that is. I think there's actually a slide about this, but on the EB2 NIW denial side, the one thing that I want you to know about, and there is a slide later that will talk about this specifically, I think that percentage is a little skewed because there are companies, particularly the FANG companies, that are mass filing NIWs, right? And I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, but every computer software engineer that has AI, ML, SAS in their resume is not a national interest waiver application. Unless you can drill down and you can specify why that AI machine learning skill is important or different, or what does being in a SaaS space have to do with AI and machine learning, and what is the specific product or the specific problem that you're solving for. Just filing an application saying, I'm a software engineer and I work on AI and machine learning in a SaaS environment is not enough, right? Like that's just not adequate framing. And the reason that we're seeing historic denial rates, I think, is because increasingly companies like Microsoft and Facebook and Amazon have decided to completely forego the perm process, right? We don't want to go through perm anymore. And there are a whole bunch of other issues on the perm side. So one of the issues, so two main issues on the perm side. One, the process. It's completely broken. It's taking about 2 years right now from the time that you file the prevailing wage determination just to get to labor certification, right? Just to get a response on the labor cert. So basically, employers are having to start perm in the first, 6 months of your employment, which most of them are not willing or able to do. The other thing with perm is, under this administration in particular, there seems to be some whack job, tinfoil hat cohort of MAGA, where when we file, because we're required to, right? We're required to advertise the jobs. You're required to do basically what the US version of a labor market test is. What's happening is when employers advertise for the jobs, we are receiving emails from some nut job somewhere. And the email literally says, I am a US citizen and I qualify for this position. And then it copies on the CC field. There are about 10 Republican congresspeople and senators and their aides. And it's a message to them saying this company is purposely not hiring a US citizen. But when you look at that person's resume, the person doesn't have any of the skills that were asked for, right? It's just a scare tactic. And so if you're a company like Facebook or you're a company like Amazon or Google and you're filing 500 perm applications, you're literally having to deal with 500 potential lawsuits against you. There's one right now against Tesla. They went after Tesla based on this, saying that Tesla refused to recognize or refused to review their petition. So there's a case against Tesla right now pending in federal court. And it's the same guy, Sam. He has done this all of Trump 1.0. He's back again this time around. And so employers are trying to not have to go through the perm process. So they are mass filing NIW petitions. The problem with mass filing is the attorney does not have the time or the inclination, perhaps, but they certainly don't have the time to put in the time of effort and research that is required to structure a winning NIW or a winning perm or a winning O1 or a winning EB1 application, right? There was a question that just came through about how does NIW help you get a green card? The NIW is a green card application, right? Now you end up in EB2. So for those of you that already have an EB2, then doing an NIW, what is the benefit to you? It basically means that the NIW belongs to you. It is your priority date. The thing that happens when you change jobs is if the visa becomes available, unless you have the ability to go back to the employer that files your I-140, your new company is going to have to go over perm again, right? Which means this time around, they may find a qualified candidate because there have been such a mass amount of layoffs in tech particularly. And so filing the NIW gives you the protection of basically this application belongs to you. An employer is not going to be able to withdraw it. You'd get to take it wherever you go, whatever employer you go to, you just get that 3-year, year-over-year extension. And it gives you more control over your own career and your own destiny in the US, right? You're not beholden to an employer. You're not stuck to an employer. So that was one of the questions. But I wanted to make sure I gave you context for why you're seeing that significant jump in terms of NIW denial. I think a lot of it is basically applications that probably weren't framed adequately, but certainly the mass filing strategy for some of the tech companies, it's really just harming them and it's harming candidates. Related to that, the other question is, if my company filed for an EB2 NIW and that was denied, can I now file for an NIW again on my own? And to that, I would say yes. It's a much more uphill battle because now on that application, you're going to have to say yes to the question of have you ever been denied this benefit, which makes it a lot harder because immigration's already going to say, well, our officers are wonderful and, very, very diligent, and they've already gone through this application. Even though I'm looking at RFEs that talk about a Chinese national, when what I filed is for a French engineer, apparently they're very diligent in their review process, is what I'm told. So you just have, you have a much harder time of making it through. But yes, you can always refile. Ideally, you want to refile with new information or added information that may have been missing in the original application. But the advice, to the extent that you can, would be that you work with outside counsel, in-house managers. If your company is filing this, you have to take the lead on this. You have to be the one that drives this train, because if you leave it to legal counsel, they just don't have the time to be doing this when they're doing these in bulk. All right. Okay. So why is framing your expertise important? when I file O1s or NIWs or EB1s, this is my starting point, right? And like the rest of the presentation is basically going to give you my strategy on how I do these. This is my starting point. And the reason that the framing is the starting point is because you need to file a coherent and a cohesive application. What does that mean? Once you have your basic overview statement sorted, right? You have something, you've tinkered with it, you've made 4 or 5 edits to it, but you have something that captures who you are as a person. What is it that you do? Why is the work that you do important or significant to the national interest, right? You have that 3-4 line statement. That statement then becomes your map. Every piece of evidence, every letter that you get from your expert, your panel of experts, whoever they may be, it needs to reinforce that statement. You cannot make an overview statement and then have an application that basically doesn't say anything or doesn't support that overview, but then you bring it back again at the end and say conclusion, hey, look at me, I'm awesome, right? It doesn't work that way. When you start with an overview statement, that needs to be your guidepost. And then from that point forward, you basically match all of the evidence that you are providing towards proving that statement, right? I said I am a recognized expert in aviation, okay? What evidence do you have to prove that? Who else is saying that you're an expert? What is the level of expertise that you are claiming and why, right? So I think the framing is the core, it's the crucial part of your application, because everything else that you do follows from that framing, right? And we're actually going to go over applications that I filed. Some of these are O, some of these are NIW, some of these are EB1s. But I'm also going to go over, like I said, the statement that I get from my clients versus the statement that we actually end up with. That is the one that we submit to USCIS. And then what are the resources that I look to for specific types to then again further enhance that statement to show the national importance, to show the critical asset, to show what work they've been doing and why it's important. All right. So let's move to the next one. So like I said, define it narrowly but strategically. And we'll go over some more precise examples. But the biomedical research, that was actually a really fun one, because this was a EB1 for a scientist who has multiple patents in his name. And when my process is always, I ask the clients to send me 2 to 3 sentence statement of why they think they qualify for O1, NIW, or EB1, right? What is it that you do? What is your core? Who are you at your core in terms of your career? What I got from this person was, I am in biomedical research. 1 line. Turns out this person has multiple patents, and they are considered an expert in conjugation of vaccines, so that instead of taking 7 different vaccines as a child, you can take maybe 2, and those 2 cure or fight multiple pneumococcal bacteria vaccinations. It is currently in use in multiple countries and is something that has been supported and funded in the millions of dollars by public health entities like the Gates Foundation and like PATH, right? None of this was in the statement that I received. It was hidden in the CV. I had to literally look for it, line by line, bit by bit, work with him to finally get a statement from him. So if you file something with USCIS saying, I am a biomedical researcher, versus my work is vaccine conjugation for eradication of pneumococcal bacteria to prevent childhood deaths, which one do you think they're going to pay more attention to? Which part of that statement, 1 or 2? Right? Because you're giving them a guidepost. You're telling them, this is what I'm saying about myself. This then allows them to say, okay, if this is what you're saying, this is what we need to look for, right? So when you're building your core narrative, the things that you should look for is, and for those of you that are in this field or that are in tech, you'll always talk about what is the problem that you're solving for, right? So think of this in the same way. What is the problem that you're solving? What is your solution? What is your impact? What is your vision? What has your impact been And what will your impact likely be if you are allowed to continue in the United States, right? The impact is two parts. And then what is your vision? What do you plan to do in the US? That needs to be the core of your statement about who you are and what it is that you hope to do, all right? And then obviously criteria-based framing. So when you're selecting criteria, hopefully you're working with counsel, but selecting your criteria is also going to be very important, right? I think I've talked about this previously. Everybody is under the impression that you absolutely need to have an award. And so I will often get into long, drawn-out discussions and almost fights with clients about, no, but I got this poster presentation award when I was in university. Okay, how long has it been since you were in university? Why is that irrelevant to your work today, right? Think about the criteria. Because there are 10 criteria does not mean you have to hit 10. The reverse is also true. Because the law says you need 3, do not file an application with 3, because USCIS will always, 99%, I guarantee it, they will challenge 1 or 2 and then turn around and tell you, oops, you don't qualify. Do not file with 3. The sweet spot seems to be 5, right? Because when you file with 5, they'll send you an RFE saying something ridiculous, like on this one, the biomedical research, I have to laugh, sorry. The RFE I got for this person that has 3 patents, anybody want to guess? You have failed to show original scientific contribution. I'm like, I'm sorry, my guy, what do you think a patent is? Like, they're not handing these out like M&M candies, man. It has to be original for the patent office to grant you a patent. So now what do? I go to USPTO. I get literally, they have that patents for dummies, frequently asked questions. I print that out, highlighted, red, yellow, blue, gray, whatever, send it to USCIS and go, here's what the patent office says. They decide whether a patent is original or not. You don't. If they have given this person a patent, the patent has been issued, it has been commercialized, how come you get to say you don't think it's original? You don't have that authority, right? But you're going to end up with nonsensical RFEs at some point. That's besides the point. The point is, be careful about what criteria you select, okay? For anybody looking at NIW applications, you want to always be mindful of the ANSAR. The ANSAR continues to be the precedent decision. It continues to be what USCIS is supposed to look at. What we are seeing is an ever-increasing trend from USCIS, particularly the officers in Nebraska, to take EB2 and push it into EB1 category, right? So what do I mean by that? EB2, it used to be enough for you to say, I've applied for a patent, I have a provisional patent, right? Increasingly, what USCIS wants to see is a patent granted. A provisional patent is no longer enough for NIW. It doesn't matter whether you have a patent or not. If you're insistent on a patent, it does not matter that you have a patent or not. You're not required to have a patent. Now, let's say you have a provisional patent and you think, okay, I'm never going to get it because this is just a provisional. What do? Focus on how that patent is already being used. For those of you that are researchers, for those of you that are engineers, for those of you that are in AI and machine learning, at the time that you apply for a patent, you've already done XYZ at your work, which tells you this is what works, and therefore you applied for the patent, right? The patent is not step number 1. It's not your proposition. It's basically the end of all of the work you've already done. So what have you already done that has led to the patent, right? Framing is very, very important, all right? So you want to keep the ANSAR in mind. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I know there's a whole bunch of questions. We'll get to questions later, but can we get to the next one, please? Thank you. Okay, letters. This is huge, and I think Dobrina had done one on letters recently, so I will just refer you to the session that Aditya and Dobrina had, because that was specifically about letters. What I will say is, in the letters, be very careful to speak with whoever your panel of experts are and ensure that they are willing to use proper language. Okay, what do I mean by this? I work with a lot of people that are from the UK or that have done work in the UK. And it's a challenge because the British or the English, don't like writing letters that say this person is an expert, right? At maximum, what I will get from professors, and I end up running into this very often, professors at Oxford and Cambridge that have absolutely phenomenal resumes. When I speak to them, they tell me, oh, we could never have done this without this person, right? And I ask them to put that on paper, and what I get back is saying they were very good at XYZ. And it's like, that's not what I asked for. That's not what helps. Okay. So you have to speak with your experts and make sure that they are able to provide specifics. So for example, algorithm reduced diagnostic rates by 40%. If that is what you're telling me when I'm speaking with you on the phone, and if that is what you mean, that is what needs to be on paper, as opposed to he is a very good researcher who has had excellent results. Because what does very good researcher mean? What does excellent results mean? But if you're putting objective facts and saying, because of this algorithm, we were able to reduce error rates by 40%. And by the way, that reduction in error rate directly translates to Y. That's what those letters need to say. That's how you frame them, okay? I think we've already talked about a cohesive petition path. You don't want to throw everything in the kitchen sink in. It actually takes away from your application. You want to be very thoughtful about, again, what is your core statement? What evidence can you use to support that core statement that then supports the work that you've done? Okay, this is my core statement. 1 through 5 are the things that I've done, right? So you have 5 chosen criteria, like I said. The way that I try to do this is if you're telling me you have an award, you have a patent, you played a critical role, you have publications, okay? What I'm going to ask you to do is provide me at least 1 letter for each of those prongs. Now, those letters can say something about 1 and 3, 2 and 4. You can give me a combination, I don't care. But the focus of each of the letter needs to focus on each of the prongs that you have selected. It's not enough for you to say, this is what I did. You need somebody else to corroborate it, not only corroborate it, but to support it and advocate for you. That's a huge difference, right? So again, take the time to do this correctly, because I think the outcomes are going to be a lot better for you than trying to rush into this. All right. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So now we're getting into specifics. And the next series of slides, you're going to see something different. So these are, like I said, actual cases that I filed. Some of these are O1s, some are NIW, some are EB1s. What you will see is the work that I do with my team to set that framing. What is the mission statement, as I call it? What is the mission statement? And then what do I look at? US government sites, right? Because again, USCIS is a government entity. They can argue with what I say, they can argue with what Medium says, they can argue with something else, right? So for example, if you tell them, I had this publication on IEEE, they can challenge it. And they'll say, well, there's not enough information for this. And so what I do is, once I have this mission statement, I then look at what are the government resources that are available that I can look at that will provide support and evidence for what this person is saying that they did, or what this person believes that they are, right? And by the way, that, like the government versus what this person is telling me, that's a part of my process when I do the initial analysis on the resumes. So if you call me and you say, I want to do an analysis on my O1, EB1, and NIW, this entire process is what I'm doing at that stage. I don't want to take a case and then do the work. I do the work before I tell you, yes, we can do this, right? So had a client who was working for an automobile company, not Tesla, just because I think that's important to say. But he was a data engineer working in AI, right? And his job title was data scientist. What was he doing? It was basically AI ML data engineer in a tech company that is at the forefront of self-driving cars, right? So automated vehicles. Couple of things on this one that I wanted to call out. Number one, sending me something. And so statement 1 is basically what I got from the candidate. Statement 2 is what we eventually ended up with after 3 or 4 going backs and, you know, sessions to go over resumes and who are your experts and what are they likely going to say about you and how do you know this person. Statement 2 is basically what we came up with once we started working together, right? So what I got from this person is, I am a data engineer, I work in AI and machine learning, that is my specialty, and I train models, and those models basically are then incorporated into these self-driving vehicles, okay? Statement 2 is what we basically submitted to USCIS. Why are AI models in vehicles important? Why is that a national interest? Because it, number one, it goes towards autonomous mobility systems that are critical to defense. We even included something about helping people with some level of other abilities or disabilities to also be able for mobility, right? So if you're maybe a little older, doesn't mean you let the car drive itself, but at least you're not having to like strain your eyes because the AI can make sense of what's on the road and help you avoid collisions and things like that. And then obviously for safety for pedestrians and other citizens sharing transportation corridors. But that's what we essentially submitted, right? So now if you're saying, okay, but it's not as simple as wordsmithing, right? Because now this is basically, somebody could turn around and say, well, now you're cheating or you're lying about what this person does. This is just the beginning. Your core statement is just the beginning. How do you go about then finding support for what you do being in the national interest and why it's significant? There is a never-ending source of government data on almost anything that you could think of, right? So if we can go to slide 2 on this one, this is literally what I looked at for this specific petition. AI and machine learning as a matter of national interest. The White House National AI Initiative, NIST AI frameworks and benchmarks, right? And then also defense-funded innovation. A lot of AI and machine learning right now is defense-funded, including autonomous vehicles, right? Because we're talking about robots and battlefields and drones flying overhead. And then we've seen that in Gaza. We've seen the situation with drones in Gaza. And so there is a lot of government funding for this kind of work, right? And so again, you pull from this. You read through all of this, you see what is it that you are doing specifically, right? Go back to your mission statement, as I said, and then what in the government-supported documents, government research, what is there that can help you then make a statement about, okay, this is the work I do, the government has said that this is important and this is in the national interest, this is how I am contributing, right? So there are specific government resources that you can look at. So second example, so the next example.
Kripa, I'm keeping an eye on the time because can we do another example because it's a repetition of these, and then we can go into questions. Is that okay with everybody?
Can we actually just go to the last one so you all can read this later, right? But this is just
Yep. I'm going to send all of this.
Yeah. So each slide basically has this. And then there's a specific one for healthcare and related, but there's also another one on project managers because that's the one I get all the time, which is, well, I'm just a PM. I don't know how to do this. The venture fund was actually really interesting. On this one, this guy worked at a venture fund. So essentially all he was doing was giving money to different entities, okay? Why is that in the national interest? Because what he had done was created a book, basically a manual for his employer on environmental, societal, and governance, ESG policies, and how giving money should be tied to ESG policies, right? Impact investing. Yes, you can give money to somebody. There's no harm in making a profit, but we should also try to do public good, right? It fits in with ESG. The things that we ended up looking at for him was, one of the things he had given money to was a childcare center near a military base that allowed for people that were in the military that maybe didn't earn significant amounts of income because, we don't pay the people in the military nearly enough. But it allowed them to access childcare near the base. That goes into military readiness. We literally ended up getting letters from DOD saying, yes, this is a crucial issue. Because I did not know this. In the US, even if you serve in the military, even if there is a childcare facility inside the military base, it is not free. Military has to pay to use that, right? Which goes directly into military readiness. Women in the army mothers in the army, all of that. The other thing we looked at was funding for people of color, founders that were immigrants and people of color. People of color, women especially, and if you're a woman, female of color, the amount of venture funding that you can hope to get is something like 3% compared to 95 to 97% for mainstream, right? And so he was funding 3 significant projects that were not only female run, but were run and founded by women of color. So those are the things you look at, all right? Okay, there's one specifically on project managers here. Here we go, PMs. These are the resources you should look at. Right now, the reason I didn't do a specific slide on PM is because they are so specific to that particular person in terms of what it is that you're managing or what project you're managing. But generally, I think this is a really good set of resources you should look at to start with. And for those of you, I will say this again, for those of you that have in-house, your company's filing for this and you're reliant on, and this is not a dig against them, but you're reliant on like Fragamin or Ball or Ogletree Deacons, and they've got about 500 NIW applications to file for a Meta employee. They don't have the time to go over all of this. So when you're essentially preparing your application and submitting materials, my suggestion to you is you do this work. You put this stuff in, you get this to the attorneys. Don't rely on them to do it. Okay? But literally every one of the examples that I have has this list. And you can just look at, also you can look at industry specific publications, right? So if you are in AI machine learning, there are very specific industry sources as well that you can look at. You can look at IEEE for one, you can look at a whole bunch of other resources that are industry specific and government specific. You can use that to help you frame who you are and why the work that you do matters. All right? But I think there we are.
Yep. This is, it goes back to the saying of like the proof is in the pudding. You're looking outside when the solution is inside. You have to think deeply about your work, look beyond the obvious. And this always reminds me of the question that my PhD advisor asked me. It's just got 2 words. So what?
Mhm.
So what? You saved millions of dollars. So what? This company is being able to run. So what? And you just have to so what yourself to the very end and show that the last so what affects the United States of America. And yes, your lawyer is supposed to be doing this for you, but be a mature client. Do the legwork so that the lawyer can enhance it for you. I'm going to take Kripa's permission and go right into Q&A. Kripa, is it okay if we go till 1:10?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Don't worry about it.
All right, folks, this is your chance to raise your hand and ask Kripa those burning questions that you have been sitting with for 45 minutes right now. So please go ahead and raise your hand just like this. And we are going to go through the list and answer the questions. For the benefit of everybody, please refrain to 1 question per person, not 1A, 1B, 1C, 1. So that we
Sorry, just before we jump into questions, just because I saw that come through, there was a question about what about those of us in healthcare? For whoever asked that question, there is a very specific slide, and I think actually 2 specific to healthcare.
Yeah.
And for those of you that work in healthcare, so please review that. But also, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. But I just saw that come through, and I wanted to address that immediately.
For folks who, I am going to process this recording, and as always, it's going to be on my YouTube channel, and I will also package the slide deck that Kripa has sent and send it to you together with the recording. All right, ready for questions. Arshad, 1 question per person. Go for it.
Yep. Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Aditi, and today, Kripa, for just easing our nerves a little bit because of all the chaos that we are facing in the last couple of days or 2. It's kind of some very credible information getting to hear from some credible sources like you. It eases some level of relief for us. So, and my question was like, okay, I hold nearly 10 plus years of experience working in the aviation industry, and currently I work for a air taxi building company, which is a kind of utmost national importance in the current Trump administration, where they have recently piloted a program for supporting eVTOLs, electrical, I mean, the air taxis basically. So, and in my past experience, I have various awards since because of the aerospace restrictive industry, those awards are excellence awards are within the company. It's not like available in the public domain, like research papers or so. Yeah, I hold mostly the industrial experience, not the publications and all that sort. Though I have excellence awards in my work area.
Right.
I would like to now when I look at the Dhansar prompt test and all, I feel like I have the kind of a overview feeling, loose feeling that I may qualify for NIW, but I don't have this research paper citations and all that. So I would like to hear from you, how will I qualify to take a good shot at NIW?
So again, NIW particularly does not require you to have publications, citations, patents, presentations, judging the work of others. None of that is required because NIW does not require those specific categories, right? Those categories are more for O1 or EB1.
Okay.
So if what you're saying is you have intercompany awards, right? But like, I mean, if you're telling me your intercompany awards are from a company like NASA, I don't see why that's an issue. Because now what you need to do there, okay, so again, I'll just go through my process. And I think that's just how I'm going to answer most of the questions is, you know, if you were my client, what I would ask you is, what is the company you work with? Because if you're telling me it's Boeing or NASA, how many people get into NASA? Right? Now you're working at NASA, which is already an entity that is in the national interest. And then what is it that you're doing there? How many people in the world do what you do? Right? Because, and there is a slide specifically on aerospace, because I actually had multiple clients that were in the aerospace industry. What is it that you do specifically? And why is that important, right? So I don't think you should be focused, particularly in your case, because I think you would be a better fit for NIW than for O1 and EB1 potentially. I think you need to look more towards who are the people that you have worked with that can speak to why these awards are significant. So if you're telling me you received an award from Boeing or from NASA, right? What is the criteria for that award? And who are some of the people that have received that award in the past? And what did they do? And how is that award related to a direct impact on aviation, not on the company, not on your specific company, right? But on aviation as a whole and aviation security. That's how you would frame your application.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Praneeth Reddy, go for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Aditi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So thanks for the session, Kripa. So I'll get into my question. So I'm currently working as a data scientist for a financial institute for last 4 years. And prior to that, I have done research on medical AI. And in that research, I really got good attention and good papers published. So now I'm in a process working with my company for my own. So I was wondering what would be my niche be here? Is it just the financial data scientist in financial institute, or should I even consider my significant contribution to medical AI while I was doing master's research? It got really good attention back then. So yeah.
I think that's a conversation you need to have one-on-one with an attorney. And I don't mean to skip the question, but for you, what you need to do is find out what connections, if any, exist between the work that you were doing on the medical side versus what you were doing now, right? Because you're telling me what you're doing now is data. But if what you were also doing on the medical side also included data, then I think there's a way to link them, right? To link both of them. you would just need to spend time to figure out what that link is and how best to put that forward, right? But if essentially at a very base level, what you are doing now is data science, what you were doing earlier is data science and analytics, even in the medical field.
Correct.
If it makes your application stronger, if you will, because then you can show sustained work. Right?
Awesome.
If you're filing O1, NIW, EB1s, the other thing you want to try and show is that you've been doing this for a while. Which is why, again, Aditi knows this. I don't have the filters that maybe I should, but I will say this. The reason you do not want to work with people that sell you 6-month advertising packages is because 6 months does not equal sustainment. Okay? Don't go spending 5,000 or whatever it is to like flood everything you can find for 6 months about yourself. And then after that, there's nothing. It hurts you significantly. So when I say, immigration influencers, you probably know who I'm talking about. Stay away from them. It's going to do you more harm than good. See, Aditi, I told you I don't have to.
Ritesh, go for it.
Yeah, so thank you, Aditi and Kripa. I'll go straight to my question. So I'm on just to start with, my priority date is 2014 October. I was twice current, and then so because of switching companies, I missed my GC line. And now after that, I published a paper, also working as a dev manager, which has impact on US, like hearing to you, Kripa. So I think I could turn it around and say, okay, does it impacts the US, what US government's looking for, right, overall? So now my question was, should I go, and also I'm trying to file a personal patent, so provisional or non-provisional, that's where all my confusion was. So should I go for EB2 NIW or EB1A? As you know, it's in 2013 right now, the date is, so.
Yeah, so again, NIW versus EB1A is different, right? EB1A, you need to fit firmly within one of those categories. Now, if you're working with somebody who's got enough experience in EB1, sometimes if I just don't have the right experience, the right criteria, I will use analogous criteria, right? Or similar criteria, because the regulations allow us to do that. It's not something that immigration likes. So if you can fulfill neatly 4 or 5 of the EB1 criteria, then I think EB1 is an option, right?
Okay.
But then you want to be careful about, again, who are your panelists, panel of experts, as I say, what are they able to say about you, and what evidence do you have? We are on the EB1 side of things, we are increasingly seeing significant pushback from immigration. So when I say pushback, I mean, again, we've talked about the patents. So if you're filing saying you have a provisional patent, expect to then be able to explain why is the provisional patent important? How has it already been commercialized, right? How is it already being used? How is it already making money, either for you as an individual or for your entity? That is what they want to see ideally for patents. That does not mean every patent has to have entered commercialization. It just means if you don't have patents that have been commercialized, expect an RFE. So be prepared to answer that ahead of time.
So does that help for EB2 NIW case stronger? Like if EB1 is not strong, because given the timeline and then how the market is, I was thinking just to have my own firm, like my package, I don't have to file PERM, right? If I switch companies again, that's where I was struggling. And that's why I missed twice, right? My green card, so.
Yeah, so I would say maybe look at what you have for an NIW versus an EB1. And ideally for those of you that are in this same situation, where you're trying to figure out, well, should I do NIW or should I do an EB1? I'll go back to what Aditi said. Be that informed client when you call attorneys and say, I think I fulfill NIW because of this. I'd really like to try for EB1. And then you and the attorney together should be working to say, okay, you have a 50% shot at this, you have a 75% shot at this. Take that educated risk.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
April Upadhyay. April, are you still with us? Didn't mean to call you out just like that, by the way. April is here. Kripa, in case you didn't know, April is a former USCIS officer. She used to advocate EB1 cases. April, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invite.
Of course. So I always tell folks that your lawyer is going to convince a USCIS officer, but you have to convince your lawyer first. And sometimes it helps to have a lawyer who's more strict than the USCIS officer. It's like having that strict parent. Like they will brush you down so much, like any other external forces, you're invincible. So make it a point that you're pitching yourself properly to a qualified immigration attorney. Kripa, would you agree with that?
Yes. And I like how Aditi says qualified and leaves it to me to fill in the rest. You need to be careful about who you work with, right? Again, EB1s, number one, are not cheap. They're expensive, whichever attorney you work with. They're expensive, probably more money than you want to put, but the money that attorneys charge is reflective of the work that we have to do. Like you've just seen literally step one of my process. Right, that's a good, 3 to 5 hours of work right there, looking for all of these resources and how do you fit in and what does the evidence say. You can't, again, and I'll say this, as often as I need to, you cannot be the person that's thumping your chest saying, I am the best, I am the brightest, if your evidence doesn't support that. The trick is finding the resources and finding the outside evidence that is objective, because that is what USCIS wants to see, is objective evidence of what you are saying is true, right? That requires research, that requires crafting, that requires drafting, that requires redrafting. You need to work with somebody who understands this process, what the current adjudication trends are, but most importantly, somebody who's willing to put time, effort, and energy into this. So if you call me and you tell me I need this filed in 2 weeks, I'm not doing it. Because that's impossible for me to do, right? At that point, I would basically be throwing a bunch of papers into a folder and sending it to immigration, knowing fully well that I'm likely going to get an RFE, if not a notice of intent to deny. I'm not wasting my time or yours.
Thompson.
Hey, Aditi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So the question I have is around NIW. So I do have a award from a company. So it's awarded once a year, and would that satisfy for NIW?
So awards within companies, again, NIW does not even require an award, right? The award is a prong for O1 and EB1. It's one of the categories you can show for both O1 and EB1. NIW does not even require you to have won an award. And so if we're talking about the award for NIW, sure, put it in, it becomes persuasive. But if we're talking about award for O1 and EB1, and it is an intercompany award, then as was the case with the person from aviation, you want to be able to qualify that award. What does that mean? Immigration officers typically don't like awards that are restricted. So any award that was given to you because you were part of a particular university or part of a particular, company, and it's only open to individuals within that university or within that company, that's not enough. Unless you can show what is the company you work with, what is the level of, like, how many applications do they receive versus how many people do they hire, right? Like Google, I think, requires you to go through something like 6 rounds before they'll take you on as an employee, and they have a application non-consideration rate, if you can call it that, of something like 96%, where they only take in about 3% of people that apply for a job at Google. If you put in those qualifying criteria, that qualifying information, then an award from an employer may be one of the prongs. I would not have that be your central prong. I would not have that be the thing that your application hinges on, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you.
Patricia Perazzo.
Hi, thank you. My question, it was related to the healthcare. I'm a psychologist and PhD working in primary care, mostly underserved folks. I'm also bilingual. I speak Spanish. And I have from my PhD some research papers, but for the main part of my job is teach residents and see patients. So I was just wondering what would be the best fit for me.
You could look at either an O1 or an NIW. I want to be respectful of the work that you do, so I don't want to speak, I don't want to ask you too many questions, but you're saying you're a therapist, any form of therapy, any form of counseling? is important.
expertise on trauma evidence-based treatments, and I've gotten training from experts in the field from doing trauma work.
Okay, so then again, tie that in to the extent that you have patients that fit this profile. Tie that into survivors of domestic violence and PTSD. Tie that into members of the military and PTSD. Tie that into, again, if this is your client profile, children that may be trans or queer or questioning, and if they live in particular areas, particularly under this administration and the policies that we are seeing about LGBTQ to spirit folk, what does that mean for them?
Okay.
And
Thank
they're
you
able
so
to
much.
function and have a healthy life, right? But
Thank
I
you.
would look at either the O1 or the NIW.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you for what you do. Goodness, I mean, I thought immigration attorneys have it bad. Any counselors right now, I can't imagine what life's like.
Just the pyramid of suffering. Who's at the top? All right, folks, we're gonna get to till 1:15. I'm gonna take as many questions till there because I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well as Kripa's. I mean, her brain is literally fried. So
I mean, and listen, at this point after Friday, what little brains I have gone.
shut
Never be recovered.
Arpita,
Nerves are frayed, so we can go as long as we need to go. It's I'm happy to answer any questions.
that's okay. I'll cap it off at 1.
Yeah.
Arpita, go for it.
Yeah, so my question is regarding original contribution of major significance. So I don't have patents, but I've worked in different domains related to AI and ML. So the links that you shared, if I look into it, if I tie that with my domain and show the impact, is that a good strategy for original contribution?
That's a good starting point. And then again, like I said, you want to be able to get letters from your panel of experts that can talk about specifically why those contributions were significant.
Understood.
Right? Yeah.
So how does that differ from critical role? Because I was planning to do the same for critical role as well.
Letters of support from experts don't have to be per prong or per thing. You can have them write letters which talk about. Now, again, especially if you're saying original contribution or critical and critical role, right? Those two things are very much related. Because again, I'll go back to the example of the conjugate vaccine, right? The researcher in that case that has the patents for the conjugate vaccine, they've gone from creating a vaccine that cures 12 pneumococcal diseases to 24, right? That was significant because again, that is a vaccine that is used across the world, particularly in what they call the developing world, to treat these pneumococcal bacteria in children and in adults above 65, right? Is that a critical role? Because that person was the one that is first named on the patent. There are 3 people on the patent, but he was first named on the patent. Yes. So your letters from your panel of experts can say things that help 1 and 3 or 3 and 5. All I'm saying is when you get letters, be very careful about what you want them to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use the same letter for original contribution and for critical role. It's fine to do them for both. You don't have to have one letter per thing.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Awesome. Jitain. All right. Meet Sharma.
Sorry, I was on mute.
All right, go for it.
Can I go? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aditi and Kripa, for this brilliant session. And this question is for EB1. Like showing major significance for original contribution. Suppose through patent. Suppose this patent is commercialized and used in the company itself. The question is like the company is big or small, that makes a difference, like a big bank or a small bank.
No, it doesn't. The thing with commercialization is, and now again, sometimes companies are not willing to provide this information, right? Because legal counsel will get involved. The company's legal counsel, I mean, they'll get involved and they'll say, no, this is not something we can put out in the public domain. But ideally, what you want to be able to say is, okay, we have this patent, we put it into commercialization, let's say in 2020. And since 2020, we have been able to increase company revenue by whatever 30%, which has ideally then created X number of jobs for additional US workers. If you can pull that chain, that works really well.
All right. Thank you.
Meet Sharma.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you for doing this. I'll quickly get to the question. What would you recommend for someone who's fairly early in their career, about 3 years of experience in AI ML, but doesn't have patents or publications or judging experience yet, but they're still working with national institutes and their work can be classified as impactful?
I would look at an NIW. If you're working with national institutes and you're doing AI and ML, you've got that list of AI ML specific government resources for you to look at. I would look at national interest waiver.
Yeah, I was thinking, is there even a point of doing a national interest waiver? Because I think the wait time for Indians is 10+ years, and I'm on a student visa, so I think I would have to maintain a valid authorization for 10+ years to finally get the priority date. So I was thinking, is there even a point of applying for it?
You can apply for it. I mean, I think there is a point to apply for it, but I hear your dilemma, right? And so in your case, if you're on an F1, for those of you that are on F1s, I think you want to try to the extent that you can to get into O1 territory. I think F1 to EB1 is a much harder climb. Possible to do, absolutely possible to do. I've done it previously for one of my clients. But it requires quite a bit of work for somebody that's on an on a EB1, right? That's on an F1 or working on an OPT. If you have AI/ML work that you are doing, if you are working with national institutes, look at other things that don't include publication. Maybe look at working as a judge of others, right? So see if you can work as a reviewer for articles that are going into peer-reviewed publications. High school competitions, college pitch competitions, those are always good as well. For those of you that are, South Asian, there should be a Thai chapter near you or an IEEE chapter that you can join. Anytime you join organizations or associations, there is also, USCIS also makes a distinction between a regular member. So like for IEEE, for example, there's a very distinct distinction that seems to be made at USCIS about whether you are just a regular member of IEEE or whether you are a fellow or a senior fellow, right? Because that means you are above the rest. And so that's something that you could do as a student, given, again, depending on what you have done in the past and what you are currently doing, as opposed to being a general member, see if you can apply for fellowship or senior fellowship at the organization, because that then becomes one of the other prongs, which is membership in a particular, in an organization that requires significant achievements, right? So then work on those things.
So would you recommend NIW at all, given that it's a 10+ year wait time and there's, no work authorization for 10+ years so far?
I think that's a personal decision. Again, I think if you can do an NIW and you can do an H1B in the meantime, yes, I understand with all of this drama on Friday, H1 is probably not anything, people probably have issues just hearing H1 right now, but is there merit in the NIW? Absolutely. That being said, for anybody that is an F1 OPT, yes, you are going to need either an H or a J or something that keeps you in the US while that NIW is working through. Okay?
Thank you.
The beautiful thing about immigration questions is it's a gift that keeps giving. The moment you answer a question, that answer is going to lead to 5 more questions. So we can keep going, but we need to be respectful of folks' times over here. We started with 115. They're like 82 right now. But I would love to cap off this session by asking Kripa 2 questions. Number one is we have a lot of follow-up questions about this $100,000 bill that's going to pass. But again, I don't want you to be beholden to your word, but I just want your thoughts, like your projection, that given that this administration just treats executive orders like I treat a thought, like let the thought comes, write it on a paper and get it signed. Will this thought materialize? Because a lot of these follow-up questions that are coming up, the null hypothesis seems to be that the $100,000 bill is here to stay. what are the chances of this even materializing on a scale of 1 to 10, given your experience in immigration law and the vagaries of the current administration?
So materializing, I think it's already here, unfortunately, right? So any applications that are being filed tomorrow, this 100,000, I think, is here. I think the thing that I was trying to say is that there will be lawsuits, particularly because this is a flagrant violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. But again, you have to understand what this administration and what the Supreme Court has done to some extent. One of the things that has happened in the last 3 or 4 months is we used to be able to go to immigrate to federal court. And let's say if I went to federal court in Seattle, which is a lot more liberal and a lot nicer, honestly, I could ask for a federal injunction from a federal court judge in Seattle, and that would stop implementation across the United States, right? That option was taken from us by the Supreme Court about 2 months ago. So we can no longer do federal injunctions. We can no longer ask for federal injunctions. There was one judge that did do a federal injunction after the Supreme Court rule, and I think that is now on appeal. So what that means is, and I think that is the strategy for some of the attorneys right now that are talking about this, we are planning on filing, different attorneys are planning on filing lawsuits in different circuits, so that essentially it turns out being a national effort, but then we're going to have to file individual petitions. So for anybody that was needing to file an H1B within the next, where you know, if you are switching jobs, you're fine. This seems to be an entry issue. It's a 212F entry issue. So if you are switching jobs inside the United States, you should be fine. There's no 100,000. It's more about anybody entering the US, right? And so if you were on an F1 OPT and you got a cap exempt employer sometime, you know, next month, and you need to go get stamping done, file for a change of status for the moment. Honestly, like, I think that's what you do. This is going to change. It's very fluid. It will change. I just don't know how long that timeline is for it to actually get struck down, or if it gets struck down, because again, we have a Supreme Court that is quite partisan, unfortunately, at the moment.
Folks, we're not taking any more questions. I told you, like, the questions are going to lead to more questions. I acknowledge that our nerves are all over the place. I mean, how do you deal with prepping for EB1 when there's this incumbent fear that, like, your life could be appended? So I acknowledge that. I really don't know what other solutions that we can provide for you. But Kripa, with your permission, April, if you're still here, because we have a former USCIS officer, there's somebody who has been inside that organization who's here with us. So for folks who are like, you've stayed to the very end, April, if you're still there, I would love to just like understand with these, like, how is it like being a federal agent who has to deal with these changes? What does it look like inside, or what did it look like inside USCIS when such changes were taking place? Can you give us some insight on that? If she's still there.
I don't think I can give you insight since I'm technically still employed until October 1st.
Oh, okay. No, then I don't want to put you in a position where you need to do that.
Oh, April.
But I just wanted, I mean, you know, my goal has always been, Kripa, and I'll end with this, that the reason why I am so passionate about this space is because everybody, like Kripa and April, are people, and I've told April about this in person as well. Like, these are people who I was programmed to fear. I was programmed to fear an immigration attorney. I was programmed to fear a USCIS officer. So me in bringing them over here is extremely therapeutic for me. And I just wanted to extend that to you, that there are humans involved in this process. Nobody is somebody else's enemy. There is a human price that we're all paying for this. The least that we can do is do some perspective taking, that when you go to a lawyer, be prepared. Don't just depend on the lawyer to show you the impact of your work. Do the legwork so that they can reserve their faculties to elevate your work for somebody like April, who in her seat, she is also trying to make sense of your work. And she is not, or if somebody like April is not a product manager, or they're not an aviation engineer. So how can you communicate your work to them in a way that helps them give you that immigration benefit that you need? So that's the entire goal over here. So to that end, thank you so much, Kripa, for being here, for April for joining us. And I'm just waiting for that October 5th to come. Like, you have to come to our side. Like, enough. Come to the outside world, and we want your expertise. But parting thoughts, Kripa, before we let everybody go.
I think all I will say is, again, like I said, I don't know, I feel like I've been awake for 48 hours now because this nonsense started Friday. There is so much happening on a daily basis. I think the only thing that you can do is take a step back, try to calm down as much as you can. Reach out to people that are there to help you. I think Aditi is just absolutely brilliant at that, but reach out to people that are there to help you. Don't despair, as awful as it may seem. Don't despair. And then again, I cannot say this enough. Yes, I understand you want to be in the US, but I also think you owe it to yourself to look at options outside, right? And that's not failure. I want to be very, very clear about that. You looking at options outside of the US is not failure. I mean, heck, I think half the attorneys are looking for options outside the US right now. It's just what it is, right? But I think just keep doing the amazing, brilliant work that you're doing. Find people, find attorneys. Again, I will say this because I cannot say this enough. Find attorneys that are willing to be a partner in your journey. This cannot be a transaction. Again, full awareness and full respect for the finances being an issue, but do not go with the person that is charging you the least, because that is going to reflect itself in the petition you end up with. Simple as that. All right. Work with an attorney that is willing to be a partner with you in this, because I mean, literally, this is the rest of your life.
Correct.
Right? Think of it in that way.
Correct. Thank you again, folks, for joining. Stay calm and carry on is all we can say. And reach out.
Yeah, I will end with, I try to post on LinkedIn as often as I can, but then for the sake of my own mental sanity, I need to, step back once in a while. But to the extent that there are ongoing changes, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I mean, I was on there probably all day yesterday posting updates as and when they came in. I intend to continue to do that on the immigration side. So if you have any questions, send me a message. Feel free to connect with me. I'm happy to answer them as and when I can.
Yep. Folks, if you are still on the call, please leave a kind testimonial for Kripa. I will screenshot that and send it to her. Probably that's going to be a elixir to her soul, given these tumultuous times. Words of affirmation never hurt anybody. So thank you again for taking the time to be here. Recording is going to be out on Wednesday, and I'm going to send you Kripa's PowerPoint slide deck as well. Thank you, everyone. And keep chugging along. EB1 is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Don't give up. All right. Take care, folks. Bye.
Bye.